supervisor of DEFSA. So we'll just move on and continue. Anybody that joined the call will continue from there. And today we'll be talking about how to manage farm team for success. And here with me, I have Mr. Adini Sholemi, who is going to enlighten us more about it. We have some key takeaways regarding it, which we have effective communication techniques for farm teams, a proven method for boosting and productivity and efficiency of a farm worker, and also we have a strategy for building a motivated and loyal farm team. And we also have the best practice for conflicts and performances of management of a farm worker, and how to create a positive and inclusive farm team culture with our farm. So I'll hand over to Mr. Adini to enlighten us more about it. Over to you, sir.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Yes, thank you, Bobo, for Nafi for the introduction. And to lighten up the room, we would like to also get to know those that are present at the moment as much as possible. So, if you don't mind, yes, for those present, if you could introduce yourself, your name, and where your farm is located, and why you joined the call, just to lighten up the mood of the room. So, who wants to go first?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Mr. Adego. I'm calling from the United Kingdom, although I run an agribusiness firm in Akure. And I've joined this group, because I want to learn a lot more about managing farm teams, which is critical to my business. I hope I'll be able to learn, more about this, from this call. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Adewale Adegoke. Yes, I think we have another person on the call. I would like her. It looks like it's a her, so I would like her to introduce herself as well. Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Adegoke. I didn't know my mic was still muted. Yes, thank you so much for joining the call. We hope message today would impact your projects greatly. We have another person on the call. I think it's a woman, and I would want her to introduce herself as well. If you don't mind, ma, introduce yourself as well. Can you hear me, ma? I don't think she can hear me. All right, well, maybe later she will introduce herself, and as more people come in, we'll try to get in their input as well. All right, once again, good morning, everyone. My name is Adini Shuremi, and yes, and a few other people set up what we call DEFSA, and we were one of the speakers in the Akure or SAFA program, and we came specifically just to enlighten people about farm workers and how to successfully manage it, get it and manage it as much as possible, or get the service and manage the service as much as possible. And today we will be talking about how to successfully manage your farm team in 2025 for success. Mr. Nafiu has iterated some key team will be playing around, and I'll be developing all this team and then help us understand more about it. So it's very important that before we go forward to state that we're recording this in case there's any part of the session that was not clear enough, or maybe is needed for like maybe a little bit listening, right? You want to listen again to it and you want to get it, or you want to send it to someone so that the person is able to take up maybe a resource of knowledge from it and maximize their output using that knowledge as much as possible. So we're recording it as well, and the link to the recording will be posted into the group as well to ensure that we can get access to it as well. Outside that as well, if there are any question for this session, kindly put them down, jot them somewhere, and after the call we will be able to look into those questions and answer them to the best of our knowledge, or to the best of our practical knowledge on the field. Aside that, then of course I'll move into what we have for you. First and foremost, we want to look into what are the trends that happen in 2024 in the farm work space. Like when we talk about farm staffing. In 2024, yes, farming was complex in itself, really complex. And when I mean complex, I mean because the country was going through a change in itself. Yes, the country was going through several changes, several layers of changes as much as possible. Um, and these changes were kind of affecting the farm staff model. It's affected it so well because, like, so much. Before we enter 2024 with a projected salary range of 30 to 45,000 naira averagely per month. That's for the monthly workers, right? We enter 2024 paying workers, farm workers between 30 and 45,000, and depending on their variation in skill, and then of course the income bracket of the farm, right? Or the kind of income the farm is actually pulling. Yes, these are the things we use in managing um, how much is being paid to workers, and that's what we enter 2024 with. But by the time we're about exiting 2024 as a period in itself, workers were already earning as high as 70 to 100,000. Right now, what changed between 1 year? The country, right? The country metamorphosed. The country changed. The country's inflation value, the macroeconomics in the country pushed standard of living off the roof, right? We started seeing workers that if they don't get certain amount of money, then they just become unloyal. They become disloyal and they are not even present on your farm anymore. You bring them in on Monday, on Friday they're out of your farm, right? That's if they are considered to stay a week. Some of them come the first day, they leave the next day. And I remember particularly that last year I myself took a tour around, like I traveled to almost 17 states last year, and to ensure that I recruit farm workers for different projects in agricultural projects across the country. And we literally, it was a disaster. What I mean is that it was a disaster because some of these workers stay months in where they are assigned to and then they leave. Some of these workers stay 2 months and they leave. Of course, by 6 months time, by 6 months time, only like 10% of the value of workers was provided lasted for 6 months in the project sites. And of course, this was very, very disturbing for us because the goal was all these workers, most of them came with the mind to stay for longer than 6 months. But then we're only able to get less than 10% to 6 months. Others 3 to 4 months in between. And then there were some unruly version around 20% that only stayed for less than a week. And I'm talking about as much figure as over 500 workers, because we last year we provided a lot of workers to a lot of farms, and this is not good because we are trying to solve a problem that has persisted or that is present for so long, and without this, productivity in farm is just it's a myth. Like it's not real. Workers are the backbone of any successful farm operation. Nigeria is not at the point where you can manage to have farm workers that are not dedicated. No, because most of our operations requires human hand most of the time. And that's why things like this meeting is happening today to help us see, okay, these are the trend, right? You have to understand trend analysis to be able to project very well into the future, the nearest future, right? And based on last year, what we understood first is there was a change in compensation, which was facilitated by the country's current standing or past standing. Now, this year, what would it look like? Which is very important. I can promise you that it's not going to be, the variation is not going to be as crazy as last year. As I said, we entered 2024 with a salary range of around 35 or 30 to 45,000 naira, right? That was what we entered 2024 with, and we left it with some farms in our own covers paying as high as 70 to 100,000 naira per month. Now, if you look at that variation, that's a minimum 35 of 40 to 70,000 naira. That's the range. and that's crazy. Now this year, will salary also evolve? Yes, it will. To what degree? Not as crazy as last year. So we're estimating between maybe a 10,000 naira and a 30,000 naira increment between the beginning and the end of the year. Of course, I won't say that some farm did not pay less than 70 last year. I'm only saying that most of the farm took their payment to as high as 70 to 100,000 to retain quality workers. Of course, quality workers mean that workers that they are confident that would stay, and then they are willing to pay as much as that to keep them at all costs, right? So of course, some people paid as low as 50,000 naira as that last year October, right? Some paid as low as 60,000 naira. Yes, of course, there were these instances, but those that were able to keep up their quality workers paid between 70 and 100,000 naira. Now this year, we don't see things going out of hand as much as last year. Going back to one of my old posts last year, January, I actually predicted, using trend analysis of 2023, to predict that last year was going to be as crazy as it eventually was. Even I myself was surprised with how to what degree it got to, but I knew it was going to get crazy. But the degree to which it got to, I myself was surprised. But of course, this in 2025, yes, it's not going to be that crazy. I'm foreseeing that a maximum of 10 to 30,000 naira it will not exceed 30,000 naira margin by the end of the year. Averagely 10,000 to 30,000 naira is what it's going to be, the margin of changes in monthly salary. Now, that's monthly operations. Now, let's come to wages and weekly and daily operations, right? So, last year, the differences between we entered 2024 with a wage range of around 2.5 to 3.5, depending on the kind of agreement you have in place. So most of 2.5 to 4,000, not even 3.5 to 4,000, because I remember that some places were paying 4,000 in 2023. Yes, some places were receiving workers that were collecting 4,000 naira per day, depending on whether they are feeding them in the afternoon or not. Right. So of course we entered that with 2024 from 2023, and yes, it depends on whether they are coming to work for a day and they are leaving, or they are going to be staying for a whole week to work and then they will leave. Those are what that means if it's 2.5, 3,000, 3.5, and the rest of that. But then by the time we're leaving 2024 behind, it's now between 5 and 6,000 naira per day, particularly in Akure, where it is averagely 4.5 to 5,000 average in Akure, right? And then of course, and there are still some that are willing to pay 6,000 naira to just have the loyalty of some quality daily workers, right? And if you look at that very well, that's almost a 20% to 30% increase in their wage expectation in just a margin of 1 year. Now, of course, we have been able to secure a much better deal for that. But even we ourselves, it's a lot of push, because we have to realign the mind of these people we are working with as much as possible to ensure that they don't go overboard with their expectations. Now, with that stated, these are the two trends when it comes to payments, right? Then when it comes to farm productivity, right? What was the trend we saw last year? Of course, we saw a demand, right? That actually was so significant that it put pressure on a lot of farm. And this farm wanted to meet this pressure, and yet they don't have the right tools in terms of workers, in terms of labor, in terms of even input to make it work. Eventually, those that are able to do have to increase their output, the prices of their outputs, have to increase their cost of their harvest, which of course the market had no option but to pay, which placed a lot of strain on a lot of people, right? And there was increased production. Yes, that production is going to continue this year. This year is going to also see a much more increase. Nigeria's food security level is critical. So right now, whoever can actually sustain a successful farm would make better profits. That's just the simple truth. Whoever can sustain a successful farm will make more larger profits. It's just the truth. The secret is in keeping the farm successful, and that's the trend we saw in 2024 that will continue in 2025. Increased demand and increased production will only create increased profits if a successful farm can be put in place. So now, with that stated, now I've just given a brief of what last year and this year could be as a comparison. Now we'll go to what my colleague Mr. Nafiu actually pointed out as key takeaway that we'll be discussing from this. He talked about effective communication and techniques for farm teams, proven method for boosting productivity and efficiency, strategies for building a motivated and loyal farm team, best practice for conflict resolution and performance management, and lastly, how to create a positive and inclusive farm team culture. So we'll pick the first one, and then of course we'll talk about how do you create effective communication techniques for your farm team. Now, the way Nigeria has been structured, right? Most of like 80% of all the labor farm, right, are from the north and middle belts. That is the actual truth at the moment. 80% of all the work, and we are speaking as a general indicative statistics for all the farm workers that we have dealt with. We don't know about others, to be candid. We're talking about those which we've dealt with, right? There are 80% from the north and middle belts, right? So why these guys? Why do we prioritize these guys all the time? Of course, the answers may look easy, but it goes beyond just the simple answers. The simple answer is yes, they are the one that has the strength to work too. They are the one that their economic situations are not as good as the southerners, right? Yes, these are obvious facts, but why beyond that? Because if you understand why beyond that, is how you get to understand how to manage them. Most of these people are, of course, as I said, last year I was at 17. I traveled to 17 states last year to make sure that I get workers for different farm projects, both in the south and in the north, right? And I had to see the life all these people are living, right? I met with their leaders, I convinced their leaders, I spoke to them in groups just to recruit them. And then, of course, reallocate them to a farm down south, right? So, but you have to understand these people to be able to leverage the value you can get from them, right? So it's not just about the economic power of where they are coming from, not strong enough. It's not just about the fact that they have the strength to pull. The driving force, right? Why these people are coming is because they want a better life overall. And in a way, they've ascribed that better life to more money. And because what their skill currently can carry, I will tell you that, in my opinion, and this can be debatable anyway. Eh, I don't see the Northerners as the most hardworking people in Nigeria. I don't, in my opinion, and this can be debated anyway, right? Because it's largely personal perspective based. They are not the most hardworking. They are just the tribe of the country that has the least option in terms of opportunity. And because of that, what they can do to get money is limited compared to the Southerners. Education as a whole has transformed the opportunity card for Southerners, and they get to decide to what degree they want to go to. And even those of the Southerners that decide to come back to crude businesses, they apply educative innovations to those things to make theirs a bit different. But on the other side, the Northerners, they have limited card on which they can play with. People were employed down to the south to do farm business and not the elite of the north. These are the people that can afford as much value as the north can offer, as education can offer. And so they are limited in their opportunities that they can grab with their hands. And farm projects is one of the easy opportunity they can pick up. So if you're going to want to communicate with them effectively, right, you need to speak to that need and see how you can meet it some way. Now, this may not always work for all of them, right? But it's going to work for a good thinking number among them. The second thing there is to understand effective communication technique and how it can work for you is that language is also a factor. You have to understand where you are from the beginning and not try to pretend to be anything more than that. These workers are largely going to be Northerners speaking Hausa as a language. And the Hausa language, for context sake, is not a language where they are proud of the language. Just that's a summary. The tribal people speaking it are proud of it, and they feel when you go to their territory that you are the one that should learn the language, not the other way around. Even though English is the national language, they expect you to be the one to learn the language, not them speaking English. But when they come to the south, they get to find out this is a different ballgame entirely, and you want to communicate with them. So you have to find either, if you can't, of course, improve your dialect speaking, then at least find someone that can be on standby to ensure a bridge of connectivity between you and the workers. It could be your supervisor, maybe you understand a bit of Hausa, or it could be someone around your farm. Just find a link. And of course, if you get your workers through us, we have those links internally already. We have so much people in our team that could help you bridge those gaps. In terms of there's an issue and you can't understand their perspective very well, you can call part of our internal resource, and then of course we'll do the mediation and ensure that this communication is smooth and then the mind is passed, irrespective of what the challenge is at the time of conversation, right? Another communication techniques that is very, very important, that must be like leverage at all time, right, is financial leverage. It's a very strong communication tool, financial leverage. After all, as I said, they came to the south, or they come to the farm that they are in, or that they will be in, for financial improvements or overall change in their life in terms of their finances. And because that is the truth, you need to understand that as a fundamental reason they are there, and you need to communicate with them. And so to communicate with them with money is simple, right? You have to make it more like something that they agree with you on. So you can't just, for example, supposed to pay them on Monday and then decide that you're not going to pay them until Friday because you don't think their work is done. That's not communicating in the right way. That's problematic communication, which will only create enmity that will make these workers either unreliable or unstable. If you think you want to use the money as a willpower to control them or effectively communicate some things to them, let it be based on targets. So, for example, you guys are supposed to collect money on Friday, and I'm willing to give you guys, but then you guys have not achieved what we agreed to achieve. This money, of course, will come on Friday, but you won't be able to access it. I'm going to give it to this person, or I'm going to put it in this place, I'm going to put it in that place until you guys can achieve it. Right? And it does not change the fact that you've met your target for the month. You just have to meet your in the end of the bargain. And that's why every farm has to work on a target-oriented system this year. And those that did last year, gracefully, those that listened to our advice and was able to evolve their operations to a target-based operations, right, made more success than those that didn't in our client pool. Most of the workers that was able to stay and achieve purpose were those that had target-oriented system. Of course, target-oriented system also applies on the kind of money you pay, right? Because when you apply target and you apply money to those targets, all of a sudden it makes things a bit easier. I can promise you that 60% of our success rate last year came from farms that actually operated on the targets. The other 40% was just speak from all around, but over 60% came from target-oriented businesses in the agricultural sector. And of course, we worked with a lot of big clients and most of the big farms. When we talk about thousands of hectares of projects, of course, they have no option but to put targets in place, or else the business is going to fail. And that's something that I believe this year a lot of smaller farms or medium farms have to put in place to ensure similar success. And that's something that is very clear. The third thing, of course, is finance, as I've stated. Now we'll be going to the next topic, which is proven method for boosting productivity and efficiency. Now, psychologically, if your worker is happy, you will see it in your farm. It's just it is a no-brainer. If your worker is happy, you will see it on your farm, because the operations will move more smoothly, will move in the right way, right? And it will be timely. If your workers are happy, they will deliver good results. But then at the end of the day, the goal is not to make your workers always happy. I've said that yes, when they're happy, they do good job or they are more efficient. But at the end of the day, you didn't set up the farm to make workers happy. Set up the farm to make profit. So there have to be a proper balance between these two concepts. You want to make profits, but you also want to keep your workers happy. Because if you don't, the next farm wants to steal your workers. They are waiting, literally hanging around to steal your workers. And that's the truth. Like the number of poaching last year of workers is increased exponentially. Like the number of people that poached each other's workers last year was astronomical. And it's because there is something to poach. Of course, there's the part where money is a good law. Like money is a good incentives, right? But at the end of the day, beyond money, right, what else can you do to prevent your workers from leaving? Is by meeting their satisfaction in terms of making them happy working with you. your work could be very tedious and workers will be happy with you. It's all about perspective. Your work could be far tedious than the next person that want to poach them, but then they'll be happy with you. It's about perspective. Treating these people as human is the first way you actually get their loyalty. They don't have much, and I will tell you that as a fact. They don't have much loyalty. My understanding of the Northerners since I started doing this business 3 years ago had drastically changed. But at the end of the day, yes, they also can have a little pinch of loyalty. But then taking them as human is the first way to see it. But not giving them that loyalty at the expense of your farm. No, you want to balance that as much as possible. So the method you could use, right, is to ensure that you reward efficiency whenever you see it. Those are methods of boosting productivity and efficiency. Reward efficiency whenever you see it. Of course, it also sticks back to the fact that you have to have target-oriented system in place, because that will make it difficult for you to leverage this opportunity. But reward efficiency when you see it as much as possible. It's very, very key. Now, that method you could use again is, right, to create a peaceful competition. And this particular for those that have a bit diverse operation, right? For example, you have a big set of farm and you have over 4 to 5 workers, or you're going to have about 4 to 5 workers. You can divide them into 2, right? And instigate a little bit of competitive advantage between them. So put them on a different task, give them different methodologies of what to do, or give them different portion of what to do, right? And reward efficient team. And make sure that you rotate them so that each team can at least get something per time. Now, you have to engage them the way corporate entities engage their staff. And when you do this, of course, it's bound to increase your productivity at the end of the day, because that's the goal. As I said, you didn't come into the business to satisfy any worker. You came into it to make profits. It's just that satisfying them is a means to a end. And the end is to ensure that there's good productivity on your farm. So you want to acknowledge them, give them good competition. These are methods that you have to put in place as much as possible. Now, aside that, we're going to be looking at the third point. And the third point is that strategies for building a motivated and loyal team. So what are the strategies you can use to build a loyal and effective team, right? The first strategy you want to put in place is trying to understand their fundamental truths. Workers have a fundamental truth, a fundamental information. So for example, they have a background, they have where they are coming from, they have what they are running from. Some of them are running from something. Some are running into something. They have target, they have goals. One way to do that, try to find out what our goals are. Now, when you find out what our goals are, you can always, and when I mean always leverage our goals to keep them in position. You can always leverage that goal to keep them in position as much as possible. You want to keep paying attention to what is their driving force that made them come to your project, so you can keep them longer in your projects. Because if you don't, you will keep losing workers from time to time. You want to keep managing your output with your workers as much as possible. You have to get the mind of why they are there and what they hope to achieve in either 1 year, 3 months, 6 months. Some of them don't want to stay long. And I'll give you a good example, right? Last year, we were working with Saru in Abraka in Benin, so in Delta. And so we got, of course, it was a very lucrative project where we had so much money to give out for so much work. And we're going to be harvesting a 3,000 hectares of cassava farm. And we started the project, we started harvesting it. And then my partners had a meeting with the management and they agreed on a 9,000 naira per tonnage for harvest, which was lucrative because in 2023, we did the project with a different pharmaceutical company in Benin, Nologbo, and the payment was quite low. The payment was low because we're paying, I think, was not 4,500 per tonnage. And then last year, we were paying 9,000 naira per tonnage. That's almost 100% increment in the value. So it was a very lucrative deal for the workers. And then we sat down with them to to bring them into this place. Some of them, when they started working, the motivation was high. Yes, they were working. As in, it was really good, really good. I think we had paid out almost 3 to 4 million naira in just a month to them. We've disbursed it to them in a month. Now, fast forward 2 months after, these guys started leaving. Oh, I'm going home. I want to go and then they started leaving for all funny kinds of excuses. Why were they leaving? It was because I was not there. I had gone and come back. I'm in Lagos now. But then these workers, you're collecting good money. Some people earn as much as 40,000 naira a week. Some are earning as much as 50,000, depending on what their strength could do. And you guys, after just few while, you want to go back home for what? So of course, many stayed, but some were just going, and I keep replacing them because of course the work is high tone. There's so much investment in machineries. There's several truck that's taking this cassava. This truck are being paid per day. Of course, there's a factory that is processing this to ethanol in Benin, and that has to keep processing continuously. So of course there was so much relying. The pace of work cannot afford to stop. It has to keep going up. So and these workers, as they are going, I have to keep replacing them, pulling in staff from different parts of the country to ensure that workers keep operating. But at the end of the day, I sat down on my team. I was like, why are these workers leaving? There has to be a reason why they are leaving. We need to understand what's going on. So I told Mr. Nafio, and I said, Nafio, let's speak to their leaders, because we've actually divided them into different groups. And once I speaking to them, we found out that some of them, they had target of the money they hope to make. And some of them have crossed their targets. In 2 months, some of them have made as much as 200,000. Yes, that's enough savings for the year for them. Some of them, it is enough for that time. Some came for marriage. The money for marriage is already passed. Some came to gather money to get married, and they've made the marriage money and they're going back. Of course, some of them came because their parents were sick, or some had different sort of reasons. And all of a sudden, I stopped getting angry. Initially, I was pissed because man, you guys are just stressed. It's not about the fact that, of course, we're not making loss on you anymore, but it's also the fact that it's stressful to keep replacing all of you. But then eventually, all the pent up anger I had about how they've been careless disappeared. Because then I realized that it wasn't about them anymore. I was the one that didn't understand what their driving motivation was. If I had understood, then I would have been able to properly account for the fact that in 2 months, some would have to leave. And in 1 month, some would have to leave. So these are what you need to understand when particularly you're looking at strategies as much as possible to build a motivated and loyal team, right? You need to understand those things that they don't say except you ask them. And they would not always say everything. So you have to ask. One way or the other, you have to find out. Are they in this to get money for something? Is there a specific reason why they are with you farming at all? And if you can meet up what they want, it's also important that you can either tell them or use that knowledge to plan. You don't have to always tell them. For example, if someone said he wants to, let's say, build a house in 3 months. Now, that's a very, very funny case, but I'm using it nonetheless. It's a very realistic thing, but then that's the idea. So someone tell you that I want to build a house in my village in 3 months, right? And that's why I came to work in the south. Already, that person is already but is in a bad state, because how can you come and work in a farm, even if, let's say, the farm pays you 100,000 per month? Can you literally save all that money? You're going to eat almost 30,000 in that month, right? And when you eat 30,000 in that month alone, that's remaining 70,000. 70 times 3 will not build you a house. So except the person's understanding or ideology is reevaluated, you can expect that kind of worker will not stay with you long enough. Because if someone come and promise 110, he's going to leave you immediately for the 110. Because he came with a greedy and unrealistic goals, and he wants to meet it nonetheless. And in the South, the sad thing about the South, which I should have mentioned earlier, is one of the reasons why salaries of workers jumped critically last year was not just because of the country. I forgot to mention that in my analysis. It was also the fact that competition and demand also affected the price of farm workers last year. There was high competition for farm staff, which also drove the cost of farm workers up, right? And that was true. There, of course, there's the how will I call it? the throw and throw methodology, or the highs and low, the island and valley system in the pricing model. But at the end of the day, it was demand that drove it up at the end of the day, right? So if that kind of stuff comes to you and you try finding out what his goals are for coming, and he says he wants to build a house in 3 months, you know that he's greedy. It means that if he's greedy and if you can't help him reshape those ideologies, then it means that whoever can pay him 110 will get him immediately. And the next person that gets him 110 too would also lose him when another person come and pay 120. And that's how these minds evolve as much as possible. We're already running late. I'm supposed to be rounding up by now. So let me pick up the next topic, the next statement. Best practices for conflict resolution and performance management. I've already talked about the performance management earlier, where I said that you need to set up targets for them and reward these targets, compensate this target as much as possible. And I think that's still the best model. Set up a target oriented system, group your workers into that system, and reward efficiency. That's the best performance management system you can put in place. Now, best practice for conflict resolution. Now, conflict resolution, because most of these workers are coming from the north, or they are going to have language barriers, right? For those that have English, fine, you can mind it yourself. If you don't have that, always bring in a mediator. It is just wisdom. Let us mediate it for you, right? Because particularly Mr. Nafiu, who is the head of supervisor, if he's the one that's managing that conflict for you, he's been trained specifically on how to listen to what they are not saying, right? I believe all of us have that skill to a certain degree. It's just that if your workers are northerners, it's just you may not be able to pick it up from them, because they used to say, Hausa does not lie. They are very honest. They are very truthful. Yes, when they are in their domain, even their domain, they can be very, very dubious, but they are not that much, right? I don't know how the law works. I schooled in the north, right? And I have seen what people say that these people are loyal and all of that. I've seen that part as well. But when I started this business and we started doing this work, I've also seen the other ugly side of the system, right? Where is the fact that they are not loyal and they lie. They lie crazy. The lie is just much. They lie a lot, right? And they are just even either as bad or even worse than the Southerners in terms of how much they lie. So, but they can be honest in their lie because they believe their lie. When you believe your lie so well, you get honest with your lie. So that's like that's the way it says in the old drama, right? It's more like an honest lie. So the lie has become an honest lie. So they believe in their lie, not talk of even now communicating it to you. So we have trained our own guys to be able to pick out the lie from the statements. So if there's a reason, if we say there's no problem, if there's a problem or there's something to worry about, our supervisor will tell you that, oh yes, he said there's no problem, but these are the things you need to look out for. Because even though he's not saying that, I can tell from his voice that, or from his conversation, that this and this is what might likely happen. Of course, we're not saying we're always right, but of course, we usually have good statistics around these things, and it's very, very key. So that's how, of course, to mind. If you have a northern workers that is not very vast in English, of course, the best way to mind conversation is to make sure that you call in someone that can communicate, because it can save you hours of back and forth. And if you don't have someone that can intermediate, now you don't have an intermediary that could help all of this, then it is very, very important that you read the body language. You read the body language as much as possible, and then you try to use sign language to explain your perspective and have them communicate theirs to you. And it can be done easily, but it takes a lot of patience and time. And remember that no matter what the problem is, no matter how bad the situation on the farm is, you don't address it when you're very angry. And this is just general, right? It's very important that you don't address the problem at the point where it is hot. You wait for it to get warm or cool before you address it. Try at the moment there's a challenge, make sure you stop it, nip the challenge, but don't react yet. Because when you react, it sends information to the mind of the workers, and at that moment, even if they are loyal up until that moment, that reaction could be the reason why they start looking for alternatives. Or it could be the reason why the person that have been toasting them to come to his farm, that had not gotten them over a while, will now get them. Because as I said, they are very reactionary. Like the Northerners are very, very, they respond to the stimuli of anger very fast. Compared to the Southerners, they respond very, very fast. I don't know, it may be a cultural thing, but yes, they respond very fast to corrections, to fights, to quarrels, they respond way too fast. And they jump to conclusion very fast. Of course, a lot of people jump to conclusion normally, but then the level at which they jump to conclusion is rapidly fast. So if you can avoid communicating your dissatisfaction at the point where it is happening, so you are able to control and manage the outcome of your dissatisfaction. Communicate eventually, but then also manage the outcome of that communication, so you are in control all the time as much as possible. And lastly, how do you create a positive and inclusive farm team culture? Now, you may not always be in your farm, which is good, which is true rather for many people. Many farm owners are often not always on their farm. But have a way you communicate with your workers, irrespective, even if there's a supervisor, let them feel like they have access to you as the owner of the farm. If you can't join them in doing one or two things on the farm, which is fine. You don't have to be there to work with them. If you can't be there to let them feel your presence around, communicate wherever you are with them. It matters a lot because it reassures them. And always be bold to ask them tough questions like, when would are you still comfortable working our farm? Would you like to leave our farm? All those questions, ask. Then some people say, are you trying to encourage them to leave your farm? No, ask. If they are saying yes, even if the yes is even a no, just ask. You may just be able to get the fact that they are leaving next week. And lastly, right, I'm rushing right now though because I have to quickly wrap up and it's not going to be more than 1 hour. So the last part there is how do you manage the financial requirement of these workers? So for example, if a worker comes to your farm now and then you have to pay the workers weekly for feeding, or let's say you have access to some level of monthly workers or some, so, and then you want to pay them feeding money. How do you pay them feeding? As a rule of thumb, do not give large sum of money to any worker. Do not. It's like a rule of thumb. Do not give large sum of money to any workers, no matter how trustworthy the workers are. Always make sure that you ration your risk assessment into any finances you're giving to your workers. Because normally, if your workers are not happy with you or they want more, even though it's not about you, they want more. Large sum of money speaks to their mind. Except your workers are monthly and daily and weekly workers. In that case, please give them whatever it is they are due. As long as they meet their target, give it to them. But if they are not weekly or daily workers, they are monthly workers, and all you give to them is feeding, because some people actually buy the food for them themselves, which is fine as well, right? But if you're giving it to them for them to buy themselves, please watch how much you give to them. You don't want to give them too much money, particularly if your investment is still tied to them. When I mean investment, for example, you invested in their transport logistics, you invested in paying them in advance, and you want to recuperate that money. If your investment is still high, kindly watch how you give them large sum of money. It's very, very important so you don't run at a loss. Now that I've said that, I'm going to be, of course, leaving the room for question and answer very soon. And so if you have questions, you can ask. But another thing I want to say is, this year, if your only preferred option of working is to get monthly, quarterly, yearly workers, please start breaking down those barriers in mindset. Because they are based on our own survey, 80% of the farm that had the biggest failure and could not meet their target last year were those that fall into this category of quarterly, annual workers, right? And they are the one that fall the most into that system, right? They have the highest rate of workers running away, highest rate of worker destroying their goals for their farm, in terms of the fact that this worker will be on your farm for 3 months, and you even say the value of 3 months. You see like value of 2 weeks. And then everything goes out of hand. You're frustrated. Your project is dying. These are the biggest success we experienced last year, which I was saying over 60% earlier, was from those that are targeted system and that pay workers based on daily value. So of course there were some workers who sent to Akure, Shasha side, yes, Shasha area. It was a vegetable farm, right? We were sent some workers there, and they were being paid on a monthly basis based on a daily value. So they pay them around, as a last year, they pay them 3.5 per day, but then they pay to them in a monthly way, but it is per day. So any day that they were not efficient, then they lose that day. And that way they were able to, of course, workers stayed there for around 3 to 4 months, but then they got better value compared to when they were paying monthly, because there was more work done compared to when they were paying monthly, because the rules were clear. The beginning and end time of each day's work is clear. The number of what was expected to be delivered is clear. And at the end of the day, you know how much you've made. The workers can actually calculate their money on a daily value. So when you're taking a day of rest, you know that that day has no money. It is your choice. So that was what we experienced last year, that those that changed became more flexible with their approach in staffing saw more success than those that want to follow the old traditional method of annual, quarterly, and the rest staffing method. And that's what we noticed, right? And this is what we've brought to you as an information as well. So aside all of that, to keep your farm running, you need to have a grip over your staffing arrangement, your staffing culture, your staffing strategy. You need to have it in control, else you have difficulty succeeding in 2025 in your farm goals and visions. So I think that's that basically about that one. Now, for the next 5 minutes, Bobo would take us through what it takes to, or maybe 2 to 5 minutes, what the value of workers on ground is. Basically, everything you need to know to hire workers through us. So, and then of course you can ask your questions, and I'll be willing to answer them for as long as satisfaction is derived at the end of the answers. All right. So, Bobo, can you hear me? And thank you so much, yes, for listening all through the session. It was very long, longer than I thought. All right, Bobo, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your explanation. And once again, my name is Nafio. So, to us in getting you, first of all, when you send us a message, the things we need to know regarding your farm. For example, if it's a vegetable farm or a tomato farm, you state the activities that is being done on your farm, and the size of your farm, and the location of your farm as well, which you'll be able to state it for us, and the workers that you need. For the daily workers, before we can get a daily worker, it takes us up to 2 to 3 weeks to get a daily workers. Why is for the monthly workers just take 3 weeks to 1 month. So it depends on how fast and how we can be able to communicate that with the farm workers. And also for the logistics of the farm worker, we do a 50-50 chance for it, which the farm owner will pay 50% of the transport, and the farm worker will pay 50% of his transport logistics as well. And also in terms of their feeding activities, it depends on how we negotiate. It's being negotiated between the farm owner and the farm worker, which is if they will be the one feeding themselves, or is inside their money, you'll be able to feed them. So from my own side, that's the only procedure that you need to do in getting farm workers. Either you send me a message by DM, or you can also call my number. So I don't know if anyone has a question to ask. Can please ask your question. Thank you.
I haven't got a question, but I got a comment. I'd like to say it's been quite insightful, learning this, learning adult stuff before, and this has basically, brought to perspective some of the challenges and the best approach, to deploy in managing these issues. So I'm going to reach out to Adeni Ishorani later to take the discussion forward, because it's been quite, it's been a pleasure listening to you guys. So I'm going to get off now. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, sir, for the compliments. Thank you, Bobo, as well, for the breakdown of the process. Yes, and I just want to add to what Bobo said earlier, that the worker system, as I said, you have to be innovative about how you handle all worker system. If you are having difficulty with annual workers or quarterly workers, right, you could go for monthly. Now, if monthly is not what you want to stress on, you could get workers that are daily, but then you have an arrangement for them to stay for a month or 2 or 3 or 4 based on certain targets. Treat it like a project, right? And get what you need. Sometimes, if what you want is not coming for the way you want it, then try something else, right? It's very, very important. Our goal is not to give you just a fixed price per se. Our goal is to ensure that we help mediate a good value between you and the workers, to ensure that the worker is coming for a value he or she is interested in, and you too can actually afford at the end of the day. And that's the goal as much as possible. Are there any other questions anymore before we wrap up this session? As I said, the recording of this is available in case you want to share with anybody. The link will be provided later, and then you can choose to share it with whoever you want to share it with, which I assume should help some people achieve good results. Any other question? Are there any other question? Wonderful. In that case, if there are no other questions, thank you so much, everybody, for joining the call. Thank you, Nafu, for organizing it. Thank you, Mr. Wale, for putting this together as well. And then to our every other participant, we are very grateful for your time as much as possible. We just got a new person joining us. Who is that? Hello.
It's Ademo Farms.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. Welcome. We'll be reaching out to you with the link of the call because the call has come to an end. We'll be reaching out to you with the link as much as possible so you could probably go through a
Sorry
listen.
about that. It's a bit of time difference,
That's fine. That's
It's
absolutely
okay.
fine. That's absolutely fine. So what will happen is, if you have any question, of course, you can either ask in the group, or you could chat up Mr. Wale, yes, I'll grow, or you could also reach out to Mr. Nafi Nu'u, right, with the questions, and then of course we'll be able to provide you answers with if you have any questions that come up while you were listening to the session, as much as possible.
Okay.
All right. That goes also to the 0813917836. You're just joining. Thanks so much for your time. A link we provided. Yes, thank you, sir. A link we provided to you as well to ensure that you're able to re-listen to the program, to the session. Yes, thank you everyone for joining once again. Have a wonderful Saturday. Bye.